is amazing how the mind of our greatest Canadian works. He sees things that others don't. To most people, this is a bowl of peaches. But to David Suzuki, this is inspiration.
A lot of people have spent their entire lives studying the fruit fly. But why the fruit fly rather than mice or humans? From the first life forms that began on this planet over 3 billion years ago, these flies are linked with us.
Suzuki was fascinated by the fruit fly, so much that he got his PhD at the University of Chicago studying it. And by the age of 26, he had found his calling.
And there I fell in love with genetics. And suddenly genetics consumed me. It was my passion, my life.
His studies of the fruit fly took him to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and his first job as a scientist. Oak Ridge had always been a major center for genetics research, but it was once the secret city. And it would connect him, strangely, to his past again. During the Second World War, this town of 70,000 was created overnight to develop the most devastating weapon in history. The bomb that leveled Hiroshima. Suzuki's grandmother came from Hiroshima. Just being in Oak Ridge could have ignited his anger. Instead, it stirred his conscience.
With the explosion of the atomic bomb, the dream of scientific innocence vanished, and scientists and technologists began to become aware of the fact that their work affected human beings in very severe ways.
Japan sent this peace bell to Oak Ridge, a symbol of new hope and forgiveness. Do you know what it says in here? It says, "I love David." Oak Ridge. But confronting his past was just the beginning for Suzuki. The world was changing around him, and he wasn't going to hide away in his lab. He got active, and he got involved. In the early 1960s, Tennessee was like the rest of the South. Separate fountains, separate food counters, separate neighborhoods, separate everything. But the old ways had to change. Suzuki was inspired by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr.
A man dies when he refuses to stand up for that which is right. A man dies when he refuses to stand up for justice. A man dies when he refuses to take a stand for that which is true.
David Suzuki joined the Oak Ridge NAACP. He was the only member who wasn't black. Being a geneticist, he could see that we were all equal, regardless of race. Yet, some of us were being attacked for being different, for not being white. Suzuki's message was something that not many people were ready to accept. We're not just equal, we're genetically linked to one another and the planet. This idea was spreading. If we're all the same, then together we can build a better future. That's Suzuki's point. The world can change. In the late 1960s, the world was changing. Flower power. Giving peace a chance. Berkeley, California was the epicenter of possibility. Suzuki was a visiting professor at Berkeley in 1969, and in the land of psychedelia, our greatest Canadian fit right in.
One thing that I've gotten off on, and lately is that basically, you know, I study fruit flies, and I suddenly realized that basically we're all fruit flies. Like, you know.
He rallied with students at demonstrations and sit-ins, the only professor invited by activists. They trusted him and related to him.
A lot of kids, I think, from middle-class families are suddenly realizing in a small way what it is to be black or yellow in a white society. They're realizing discrimination in its complete irrational form.
Suzuki's love of scientific inquiry and passion for human rights merged at Berkeley, California. There was something else that Suzuki was passionate about: Canada. And it was time to go home. Later in '69, he arrived on campus at the University of British Columbia. And there was no doubt whatsoever that our greatest Canadian had been transformed.
Hey, Dave, look at that. Really fantastic.
At UBC, he was already one of Canada's most brilliant geneticists. And who wouldn't notice a teacher like this? Even in heavy times, he never lost that sense of fun.
If I did that, of course, I'd be mad all the time, and I'd be a drag. Nobody would want to spend any time with me.
This is a song about David Suzuki.
I'm David Suzuki. Hey, wait a minute. That's my job.
Canadians don't like our heroes to take themselves too seriously. Even the greatest Canadian. He likes trees. He likes animals. He likes people. But most of all, Canadians. He likes planets. Probably a lot of planets.
Well, invigorating and free.
Mysterious place, the universe, as well as the globe, the earth.
This is the first in a 5-part series, Suzuki on Science.
But all fun aside, Suzuki was always taking his role as a scientist seriously.
For centuries, scientists have been a small band of people dedicated to the pursuit of truth in relative seclusion from the rest of the public.
Suzuki took science from the lab to the television set. He put genetics under the microscope.
And it was only when students began to say, hey, wait a minute, genetics has been misused. You're responsible for that. And I kept saying, no, not me. I work with fruit flies. What have I got to do with Nazism, with Hitler? And it was students that said, no, you can't get off that easily. You contribute to a body of information subsidized by the taxpayer from which both beneficial and terrible things are going to result. Now, because you contribute like everybody else, you've got a special responsibility. That was a very shocking thing to realize, because they were right.
Und hinter uns kommt Deutschland!
It was because of genetics in Germany that ultimately led to the Nazi Race Purification Acts. It was because of geneticists that, in fact, laws were passed in the United States prohibiting interracial marriages. And I realized then that science is not something that can be allowed to be done behind the doors of labs.
Seeing the bigger picture, that's what sets Suzuki apart from every other so-called greatest Canadian. The teacher became a leader. Suzuki's commitment to a greater good is something every Canadian should appreciate. He's not afraid of standing up for what's right, no matter where the cause takes him. These are the qualities of the greatest. For more than a generation, we've watched as Suzuki put those qualities into action. Polluted water in Canada? It's the same in India.
It appears the reservoirs are rapidly filling up with silt.
The extinction of species? It's happening in South America, too.
Already, construction activity has caused the local extinction of 60 kinds of birds.
Saving a threatened way of life in Canada. He does the same in Africa.
The San people have developed a way of life that has enabled them to survive in equilibrium with this fragile environment for tens of thousands of years.
The struggle that's going on here is a struggle for future generations. We're all in it together.
Suzuki saw the power of television, and he wasn't going to waste it.
The Amazon forest is being burned to the ground. Day after day, smoke fills the air.
This conflagration is a consequence of injustice, ignorance, and greed. It's burning in Brazil, but it's fueled by the same forces that are laying the whole world waste.
And while the world was laying to waste, the people we elected to do something about it were singing the same old tune.
Sure they steal your heart away.
No one seemed to care very much about the ozone. Only a few people were talking about it. One of them was our greatest Canadian, David Suzuki. He's warned us, led us, taught us. He's trying to make a difference in Canada and the rest of the world. Who would you trust with your future? Keep in mind, no one owns David Suzuki's opinions. There's no special interests lurking in the background, no payoffs. Our greatest Canadian is sponsored by no one. Just a little love from Mother Nature. Mother Nature is totally voting for David. That's for sure. Yeah, that's one huge hand on the button of vote for David Suzuki. And she would say, yay for David.